All right, picture this. You're at a conference watching a keynote from someone who's just brilliant. They're at the top of their field, super confident, and then they trip walking across the stage. There's that split second of silence. But then a funny thing happens, doesn't it? You find yourself kind of liking them even more. So why on earth does that happen?
Well, it all goes back to a basic rule of storytelling, something Emma Coates from Pixar nailed perfectly. We're just wired to connect with the struggle, with the effort. We love seeing people try. It's not about being perfect, it's about seeing someone give it their all. So let's take that a step further. What happens when all that admirable effort doesn't end in a win, but in a very public faceplant? That's where the psychology gets really, really weird and kind of turns our expectations upside down.
So, in this explainer, we're going to unpack that exact paradox. We're going to look at why a little crack in the armor of perfection can actually make someone more likable. But to really get why our admiration can tip over like that, we first need to start with physics.
Yep, you heard that right, physics. We're going to build a physical model for how things stay stable, and that's going to help us understand exactly what's happening inside our minds when we feel like we're about to fall apart.
Okay, so the big idea here is the center of gravity. It's a concept that goes way back to Archimedes, over 2,000 years ago. All you need to know is it's an object's balance point, that one spot where all its weight is basically concentrated.
And here's why that matters for stability. If something has a low center of gravity, like a Formula One race car, it is incredibly stable. It's built to just hug the ground, which makes it super, super hard to flip over.
But on the flip side, you have something with a high center of gravity, like a big SUV. It's just naturally less stable. That higher balance point means it's way more likely to roll when things get dicey. So here's the takeaway. Lower is more stable. Got it? Cool.
All right, so let's take that physical idea of tipping over and see how it applies to our minds. What's the psychology behind that feeling of crashing and burning under pressure?
Well, to explain this, sports psychologists came up with something called catastrophe theory. And it basically says that when we're under a ton of pressure, our performance doesn't just slowly get worse. No, it can suddenly and totally fall off a cliff.
Now, to get this, you have to know there are two things happening at once. First, there's the physical stuff. They call it somatic arousal. That's your heart pounding, your palms getting sweaty. And then there's the mental stuff, cognitive arousal. That's the voice in your head, the worry, the fear of failing.
So at first, as you get physically amped up, that adrenaline before a big presentation, your performance actually gets better. You're sharp, you're focused, you're totally in the zone.
But then you hit the tipping point. This is where that high-octane physical energy crashes head-on into intense mental worry. It's like your body is screaming, go, but your brain is screaming, oh no, don't mess this up. The two things just collide.
And the result of that collision is the catastrophe. Your performance doesn't just dip, it completely tanks. It's that soccer player in the final so full of adrenaline and pressure who just makes a wild, awful tackle. The whole system just overloaded and crashed.
So from the inside, that public failure feels like an absolute disaster, right? A total catastrophe. But here's the really mind-blowing part, how that exact same moment looks to everyone on the outside.
This brings us to something called the pratfall effect. It was identified by a social psychologist named Elliot Aronson way back in 1966, and it basically flips everything we think we know about failure right on its head. It says that sometimes making a mistake can actually make people like you more.
Aronson's original experiment is just fantastic. He had people listen to tapes of someone acing a quiz. This person was clearly smart, and people rated them as highly likable. But then he played another version where that same smart person clumsily spills coffee all over themselves. And guess what? Their likability shot up. Meanwhile, when an average performing person spilled coffee, their likability went down.
And that brings us to the most important rule of all. This whole pratfall effect thing only works if you've already proven you're competent. The mistake doesn't make you likable. It makes an already impressive person seem more human, more relatable. So vulnerability is like a superpower, for sure, but you have to earn it with competence first.
Okay, so this is a really cool psychological trick, but how does it actually show up in the real world? Well, let's look at how some massive brands have used this idea to their advantage, completely on purpose.
I mean, think about it. Domino's ran ads literally admitting their pizza tasted like cardboard and swore they'd fix it. Sales soared. Avis Rental Cars built their whole identity on being second best with the tagline, "We try harder." And Volkswagen once ran a famous ad calling one of their brand new cars a lemon because of a tiny scratch. All of them owned a flaw, and it made us trust them more.
And you can totally do this in your own life or career. When you share a mistake, it's all about how you frame it. You got to focus on the lesson, on what you learned, show people how you fixed things or what you did next, and just be real about it. It's not about the mistake, it's about the story of growth you build around it.
At the end of the day, it just boils down to this. We live in a world that's obsessed with perfection, but nobody actually connects with perfect. People connect with what's real. Being authentic is what builds trust. Sharing your mistakes doesn't make you look weak, it just makes you look human. So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Think about that one thing you see as a flaw, that mistake you made that you still cringe about. Is it possible that framed the right way, it could actually be your single greatest asset for connecting with other people? What flaw could be your greatest strength?